I'm Britt,
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Kelly.
and this is the So What podcast.
Happy Thanksgiving!
Happy,
Gobble, gobble.
happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy American Thanksgiving. Canadian Thanksgiving happened last month.
Hashtag Merca. We could cut that out.
Super proud. Say, what are you guys thankful for this month? What are you thankful for right now in November?
I'm thankful that it is not as hot in Florida as it is over the summer. I'm thankful that I can have the doors open at least a little bit at my house.
Fair.
Yeah.
You don't get bugs? Like, for real, you don't get bugs if you leave your doors open?
Well, I have
a screen?
Yeah, I have a screen.
So I'm picturing...
not like...
He just leaves his doors completely
Door
open.
in my house.
Did you see
can't-
the tone of
you
face
can't do
that I
that.
gave you? You don't get bugs if you leave the door open. Well, I have
can't-
screens,
Yeah,
Kelly.
but the other thing is you can't do that in Florida because something other than a bug will wander its way
something's
into your
slithering,
house.
yeah.
Like a neighbor.
Right, 'cause
God, no.
exactly.
Please no.
Florida man will just walk in. Hey, I saw the door open.
I
Came
thought
in
I
and set
was
something on
invited.
fire. No, because I think about when I was in Costa Rica, and like the windows were always open. There was no screens, right? Because there's no bugs, there's enough breeze and everything. And then I think about it in Florida, I'm like, ugh, you can't do that. But
Did
yeah.
you notice that humble brag? She's like, I mean, when I go to Costa Rica,
I am thankful
for friends like us.
Yeah.
for my friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I am also thankful for the weather, the change in weather, because it's still warm outside.
Right,
But
yeah.
I can go outside without melting.
Yep, yeah.
See, I'm not thankful for the November change because I can't get in my pool anymore. October is usually the latest I can get in the pool.
You can get in your pool all the time.
It's cold.
I've been in your
know.
pool in the middle of winter
true.
to do a polar plunge.
In 60 degrees.
And it's not even 60. It's like 68. Yeah. There are other, there are other people, other parts of this country that don't have a pool that can get warm enough for them to get in during the winter
Why do they live in those
because it
places?
freezes over.
Why do people live in those
I
places?
don't know.
Aren't you from Pennsylvania?
People ask the same question about people living in Florida with it being hot all the time. So
That is true.
So
yes,
we-
I am from Pennsylvania, but it changes real quick.
Okay,
Like your
yeah.
blood thins out real quick.
Yeah, we had a pool at our house growing up, humble brag, and we had solar heating on our pool, and so it would like pump up and like go
You
through
were
these black
fancy.
things. And my mom would only get in the pool if it was like 82 degrees, and it was disgusting, like
Same, bro.
bath water.
86 is
No,
my perfect.
and so we found out that
Nuts.
you could turn it on overnight, and then it would cool it off. And so we just ran it overnight, and much to my parents' chagrin, paying the electric bill. Now they just found out it was me, but I am the baby, so they forgive me.
there you go. I already forgave you.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so we're talking this month about finding balance.
Yeah.
You know, like talk about change a lot. Things are kind of, I guess, evening out for us now, but how do we find balance in the midst of things going on in life?
So I heard a couple years ago somebody say that oftentimes we think about finding balance and we view it like the image that's often put up on PowerPoints when you go to these trainings or whatever. It's like a seesaw. And so you have the like triangle at the bottom and the middle, and then you've got the plank that goes across, and you've got pick your two things. So most people say like work and life, work and home, whatever. And so how do you find that balance? And so this person got all like nerdy physicist on us, and they said what happens is when you have more demands in one of those. So if you have a lot of stuff coming up work-wise, that you try to find that balance, and it's impossible to do that. And so what you need to do is move that fulcrum, move the triangle at the bottom, and look at it as a season. And so during this season, so like a CPA during tax season, their work-life balance is going to be a lot of work and a little bit of life. And so you move that focus over to the work side for that amount of time. And they said, and then on the flip side, like if you have a family member who gets a scary diagnosis, you move your emphasis, your fulcrum, way over to the life side and let work kind of figure itself out. And went through this long explanation of it, and they said at the very end, they were like, and we also have to recognize that none of us have just two things. That it's not like a seesaw. It's like an 8-legged thing where you're like balancing in the middle on a
It's like a
spring.
plate.
And like, right.
It's
like,
really a plate with different things at the edges, and you've got the little point.
right.
Yeah.
And so you move that where you need to move it to help yourself. Like your emphasis, your focus, your attention goes to what part of your life needs more attention. And then, kind of with that is, what are things that you can do to remove stuff from your plate?
Yeah, because that would be my question then. In that image and changing it from like an either or kind of seesaw thing, how do you attend to all those pieces on the plate without living your life reactionary all the time?
So own it. That, like, if you know that something's coming up, you set yourself up for success. That I know in this period of time, I'm going to need to put more emphasis on, work or home or whatever. Like you're getting married, so your work is going to suffer. And hopefully the people you work with, if you don't work by yourself, like they understand, I'm getting married in 2 weeks, so I'm not really here mentally. And so that kind of going into it. Part of it is reactionary. Part of it is like, if something comes up real quick that you have to respond to it, you do that. I talk with one of my kids who struggles with a lot of mental health things. And we say, do the hard things when you can so that when it becomes impossible, you don't have to. And kind of more to that is that, like, if people in your life, right or wrong, if people in your life see you put in the work, when you need to back out of something, they see, oh, this is out of the ordinary. Like, Kelly has such and such going on, like, Brit, whatever. And so you've built that, like, capital to kind of back away from things.
So balance is a difficult one for me. It's something that I really highly, highly value. But that being said, I don't know that I'm very good at it. Sometimes sometimes it's seasonal and things kind of push and move. And I recognize that more often than not, I am pretty reactionary in that kind of thing. I think for me, it's not always been about finding balance, or even sometimes not even having the tools to balance well, but it was giving myself permission to not be balanced, giving myself permission to recognize that, it was okay to have to, cancel some things. And I remember a couple of years back, I always have trouble choosing between two good things are difficult to choose between. It's real easy to choose between something that's not that great and something that's really great. That's super easy to choose. That's not a difficult decision. Someone I knew was, was an important thing in their life was happening, and I was asked to be there. And then there was this other thing going on that was, really more for myself. And I really struggled with choosing the myself piece. There was a lot of, like you said a while back, something about shoulding on. And I was doing a lot of that on myself, shoulding about this person cares about my opinion and my presence. So even though I don't really feel like I need to be there, there's not a lot of these other things. But I should, because that's, that's the right thing to do. When really I didn't even know where that idea that was the right thing to do had come from. I'm sure there's some trauma somewhere back, some conversation with probably a parent. But in general, the feeling that there are certain things that we're expected to do just because we are. And giving myself permission to choose myself sometimes was huge. And I don't regret it at all, even a little bit. Like there was another person I knew that I think was hearing the shoulds on themselves a little bit more. And to be fair, that person was also a little bit more connected to the person who was doing that stuff. There was even a little bit of a guilt trip at one point when I told them, I was like, hey, I'm not going to be going to this. There's this other thing that I want to do for myself that I really want to do. I'm going to go do that. And it was really freeing. And then realizing that there was no aftermath that came down after it. Like the person whose event it was, they don't hate me as far as I know, or they've never told me if they are, but as far as I know, they're not, hurt that I didn't go. They more or less understood that it was, there was this decision that had to be made, and I just couldn't do it. So there wasn't the fallout of all the shoulds, all those reasons in my head that I was like, well, I guess I'm going to just have to suck it up and do it. None of that happened. So that was great. For me, it was really awesome to have that freedom to make that choice for myself, but then to also not have any of those negative consequences happen meant that the next time I had another decision like that, it was more or less easier to make. Right. And there was less of this back and forth of, oh, should I, how's this going to work? And it giving myself that permission was a big step. I think it allowed me to get to a place where I can move the fulcrum around a little bit. I get to choose what things I put my attention towards. And it's not a bad thing to have that piece and to be the one making some of those decisions. So
throughout your what you were saying, I realized that there is such a fine line between balance and boundaries.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a loaded question that is a leading question also. So like all of my training on how to ask good questions, I'm going to break it here.
You break it by asking a leading question.
So when you said no to that instance, how much explaining did you offer?
Can I interject right here?
Yeah, please do.
I'm 99% sure I know.
I think you do, yeah.
And I think part of the thing, too, for you was giving yourself permission to want what you wanted.
Yes.
That was a big part of it for you. And, so I think this, makes a lot of sense right with what it's asking. But I think it's important to, identify that.
Yeah, no, you're right. There was a big piece of that, absolutely, was me accepting that I wanted to do something different, that I truly did not really want to do the other thing. Not that I wouldn't have, but I would have only done it if there was no conflict. And because there was a conflict, I was like, I really struggled with this thing that I knew I wanted to do and be able to admit that. But how much explaining did I do? More than I should have. I must have had the conversation in my head a million times. And I went outside and I paced it and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to say and this is what I'm going to say because if I don't say this right, they're going to be really hurt. And then, and this person cares about my opinion, so I need to care about their opinion of how they feel I interacted with it. And
did the other person follow the script that you made up in your head?
No, they didn't. It's funny how that doesn't happen.
I hate it when that happens.
It's really rude.
It is rude. Come on.
Yeah.
And it's actually hard for me to think of what one of the pieces of that conversation for me was trying not to explain and give a reason. I don't think I did a very good job at it, but it was probably the first time.
Yeah.
So it was probably the first time I didn't really go into trying to have, and now actually funny that I had more explanation for the other person going than for the person whose event it was actually for.
Yeah.
The person whose event it was, I was able to just say, hey, I really appreciate that you wanted me there. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it. I really wish you the best, and whatever it was.
Right.
And let it go. And they were like totally understanding. And they're like, hey, that sucks. Sorry, you're not going to be there, but still love you. Still,
Right,
and it was great. Whereas the other person, man, I was probably on the phone for like 15 minutes of kind of a, like, and it wasn't even at that point, actually, probably wasn't even me explaining my reasoning and giving an explanation. It was more of a just the tension of,
Are we still good?
Are we still good? Because I'm not going to go, and I know you expect me to go because you feel expected to go, and you kind of don't really want to either because there's now a disconnect and stuff. And so, but again, none of the negative consequences I thought were going to happen ever came from that. So, but before that incident, every time I would have to tell someone no about something, and boy, there was all kinds of excuses.
Yeah.
In fact, probably more times in my adult life that I didn't need to fib or tell a lie or something like that came from those kind of me just trying to balance, like, oh no, it's okay. It's not that I don't want to. It's just that I can't. And when that was never really the case, but it was. But,
I feel like I talked about that last month of peace mongering. Or was that 2 months ago? Yeah.
Yes,
It all
peace
blurs
mongering.
together.
Yeah.
It does blur together.
So, all right. So what about you, Kelly?
Sorry, I'm beating up my microphone. How do I find balance? Or how do I move the fulcrum? So this is the thing, right? I struggle because my identity for so many years was rooted in how am I valuable to others? And in a lot of ways it still is. Like something, it's a battle I kind of fight all the time. And so like when I was making the decision, for instance, to leave my most recent job that I left, I worked in a school. So to leave the school was so hard for me because that year, everyone needed me. I was irreplaceable and no one could do the thing that I was doing. And so, and it was like a very heady thing. And I was like, in the same time that it was like, this is a lot of pressure. It was also, how could I go? Not because these people need me, because who's going to need me when I leave? And I was like, ooh, that's a problem.
So not that nobody else could do this. Okay. But, oh, wow. Yeah.
Which is where I thought, Kelly, if a client said this to you, what would you say to them? To which I said, Therapist Kelly, shut up.
Right. Yeah.
We don't want to talk about that yet.
No one wants to be therapized by themselves. But yeah, so that for me, I have developed this habit of checking my intentions pretty much all the time, like just kind of checking in. It's a relatively fast thing now because I know how to do it. So there's a lot of that, like the things that I want versus things that I don't want. I don't really do things I don't want to do. And that's not just like a new thing. I just generally don't do things I don't want to do.
I've heard.
Yeah. So there is that. Also in the pieces of, so like, can I use an example from Britt's life?
Sure, please.
Wow.
So like, I
what
have
would
a
Therapist Kelly say about like?
I have a New Year's Eve party that I do every year,
Oh,
right?
I've never been invited, but
And Britt
geez.
didn't go this past year,
Right.
and beat himself up over it.
I'm
and in reality,
really
like
uncomfortable
I
right now.
talked to my wife about it. I was like, it's fine, like right, like how can I make him understand that it's fine?
Right, yeah,
And because I know how bad it beat you up, you beat yourself up over it. I have never joked about it because like normally I'd joke about it and be like, oh, what are we gonna do? But like I know how big that was for him, and so I've never been like, oh, why'd you abandon us? Because it was like whatever. I'll see you next year or not. We'll see each other. It's fine. Like it just didn't. So in making that choice to not guilt other people over that balance thing has given me the permission and the space to also make the decision I need to make for myself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Sorry, I felt like I cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're good. That was where I was ending.
Yeah. So one, I've never been invited to your New Year's Eve party. Just going to throw that out there.
Kevin, I invited you to sit with Britt and I at this most recent event that we all went to.
Right.
And
No,
you
it
said
was a
absolutely
pity.
not.
It was a pity
Sir,
invite,
You said
madam.
absolutely not because you had better friends to sit with.
They do. Yeah, no. That is, we will check the tape and prove that you're wrong.
Pretty sure
Do you
there's a
remember
text
that
message
time
of
that
it.
you
Yes.
told Britt And I'm a bad friend because I don't respond to
Right.
their memes.
Yes.
And I actually responded to every single one of them.
Yes,
You're like,
you did.
dang it.
Yeah.
Well, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I definitely don't respond
Yeah.
to all the memes in the
Now,
group
Brits
text,
I don't
so
usually respond to. And I don't
That's-
actually answer the phone when he calls either.
That's
Right,
definitely
yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So,
I'm a jerk.
yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say about like, something with boundaries or what were you saying?
I was talking about how giving other people the space
Oh yeah,
to...
yeah. Okay, back to me. So center of attention. So one of the things that I had to realize early in being a pastor is the ridiculous expectations on one, anybody that works at a church, and two, particularly pastors. And so from my first church where I worked, I was told by leadership to never give out my cell phone number because people don't understand boundaries. I've always had a, like, call the church office if this is an emergency, press this button, and it comes to my cell phone. And it's usually like 3 a.m. Hey, just want to let you know that I twisted my ankle, but I'm fine. Then why call at 3 a.m.? Like, that's, people don't understand boundaries. Interestingly enough, I am ready to start putting out my cell phone number because I don't think that my current congregation will abuse it. And two, I feel like I'm comfortable enough in who I am to be like, yeah, no, that's not, like, I'll call you another time. So one of the ways that we handle balance is by taking things off of that plate. And I love that Britt called it a plate because, that fits with what we talk about is taking things off our plate. And it goes into the whole idea of self-care. Like, how are you caring for yourself? And we care for ourselves in lots of different ways. And, what works for one person does not work for another person. I always joke that gardening is therapeutic for my mom. And it is torture for me.
Same.
Like,
Same.
I have no desire to ever do that. And so my mom will have a bad day at work back when she was working and wasn't disgusting like she is now and lazy all the time, which, by the way, we laugh about all.
Sorry,
it's like,
Mom.
we're good. Yeah. I love Susie. So, so she would have a bad day at work and then come home and would weed or garden for like 30 minutes. And that was her therapeutic time. And I never really understood self-care until I worked at a disciplinary alternative school in Houston. It was a large city. And anyway, so all of our students were either on the way to or from jail. And so drug dealers, gang members, like physically assaulted once a month, like just crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. And I worked there for maybe like 2 months at this point. And I came home and Annette, I think we had 2 kids at that point, and I was frustrated at work. And I came home, and Annette said to me, my wife, loves me enough to tell me the truth. She said, you know how you get really frustrated when your students act like 3-year-olds? And I said, yeah. And she said, Seamus, who's our oldest, Seamus is 3. And then let silence do the heavy lifting. And she said, me and the kids are going to run to the store. And left. And that was all I needed to hear. And so I went to school the next day, and one of my assistant principals had a background in mental health. And I was like, dude, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is not going to work. And so he sent out an email to all of the middle school staff. So we had a 6th and 7th grade wing and then an 8th grade wing. So all of us got together, all of the administration got together the next day after school, and he said, mental health background tells us that anytime you go through a traumatic event, a lot of times people deal with it with a gallows or sick, kind of dark sense of humor. And so even though you're allowed to rush out of here at 3:45, don't. Like, stick around, laugh, make fun of us, like, whatever. And so I did that every day. Like we stuck around. I mean, that fed my need to be the center of attention. That fed my failed stand-up comic. Like, like I can do impressions and whatever. And we talked and we processed and we, like, oh my gosh, that kid drove me crazy. Or like, I can't believe the administration is making us doing this, or like whatever. And from that moment on, like I would get home and not bring my baggage with me. And so I wasn't bringing that stuff on my plate to home where I'm already raw, I'm already ragged. And so anything, like I don't have capacity to deal with stuff. And so I was able to leave that there. And then when I get home, have more ability. I've also learned like kind of preemptive things. If I know that I'm about to go into a meeting that is going to be contentious, because every once in a while church meetings are contentious. And so if I know that one's going to do that, I will plan a run afterwards because that's how I deal with, like, I run my anger out or my frustration or whatever. And so that is another like good way to kind of deal with that. And again, my wife loves me enough to tell me the truth, and she'll like tell me like, you need to go walk around Home Depot and look at tools we can't afford, or like you need to go for a swim, or like whatever. So, finding ways to practice self-care, finding ways to like take things off of the plate so that that fulcrum isn't trying as hard to find that balance there.
Yeah.
So there's this this theory, and it's a bunch of different psychology theories, which you're familiar with since you took that one class.
Right, yeah.
Theories that are kind of mushed together. So I'm not going to go into the depth of it, but basically it says there's.
Do you want me to mansplain it to you?
Maybe that would be a good idea.
Okay,
So I'll
all right.
start, and
All
then
right,
you can
yes,
kind of
yeah.
mansplain it back to me.
Make sure you talk over her when you
I will,
do that.
yes.
Obviously. So basically, the portion of it that's super important is the two pieces that are like the most basic piece of our psyche, which is our they call it the explorer and then the soldier, right? And so the explorer is similar to like what your id would be, which the id gets a super bad rap anyway, but your explorer is the most basic part of you. Like it gets you what you need. Bottom line, I need what I need. I'm going to make it happen no matter what. And then you've got your soldier that comes in as you get a little bit older and you understand the shoulds and the rules and the different things that keep everybody in line. And then your soldier and your explorer are almost always at odds. And later on you grow other pieces that kind of like help that and everything. But the balance piece is, I find so often that people I talk to, whether they're clients or friends or, I don't know, myself in my own head, the conflict comes from either being too much in the explorer or too much in the soldier, and not being able to balance the two. Not being able to say, I have this need. Like getting your own needs met really, really calms the rest of it. So even if it's like 5 minutes at a time. So my sister's a youth pastor and she goes on mission trips and she's an immense introvert. And so at one point I was like, why don't you just like take your book, right? And go into the bathroom stall and give yourself 10 minutes. No one's going to question why you're in the bathroom stall for 10 minutes. If you go sit in the van for 10 minutes, if you go sit in your room for 10 minutes, somebody's going to ask, right? But go in the bathroom stall for 10 minutes. No one on a mission trip is ever going to question that. And read for 10 minutes just for you. And then come out and do what you're going to do. Like, you're not shirking responsibilities, but when you give yourself in little pieces the things that you need, you will need to like blow things up less. But when you don't, that explorer will set the house on fire to get you what you need. And that's when people end up with these things that they've done in their lives or in the world around them that they didn't intend to do and would not in any sort of conscious state be like, I'm going to do that thing. But they just never give themselves what they need, and they're always dealing with the should, or they're always in what they need and never dealing with like the boundaries piece of like, having discipline in those things. And when you're living in one or the other of that life all the time, nothing works. Like nothing works long term. And I think that's the piece that for me, like the finding balance in not so much like how much time do I spend here versus here versus here, because now that I'm, my own boss and like in reality, this is the problem with my life, right? I would love nothing more than to just do my work and then spend the rest of the time with my wife and my dog and my cats. And I would never talk to anybody else. And I feel like that would make me happy. Like it wouldn't make me as like full, I'd like talking to the people, like being part of people's lives, but I would be really happy that way too, because like that just sounds really nice for me. But the piece of that keeps me like doing other things is the fact that I know the soldier needs to come out too sometimes, like that would be the explorer piece for me.
Balance is not so much about the things on your plate, but where your focus ends up being.
Yeah, and I think maybe this is just me, and I'm projecting to everybody else in the world, but I think we forget that a decision does not mean we're always going to do it. Like realizing the seasonality of things. And so for right now, I need to put my focus here. And this right now might be, I need 5 minutes to go sit in the bathroom stall and like, I'm not even going to read a book. I'm just going to pretend like I am because I need that. Or it might be like, hey, I just went through probably the worst thing that I've ever gone through in my entire life. And for the next 3 months, this is what I need to do. I think recognizing where we put our emphasis and recognizing how long we need to do that. Yeah. And I mean, we could talk forever about allowing that in other people.
I think we have to first be able to allow that stuff in ourselves before we can even begin to allow it in other people.
Maybe that's a topic for another podcast of talking about boundaries, like really delving into where I end and somebody else begins. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So we'll be back next month with our holiday episode. And until we come back, where can they find us?
We can find at so_what_pod on Instagram and so what podcast, all one word, on TikTok.
All right. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye. Sweet.
All right.
Good job, y'all.
I think it makes my head sweaty.